live from New Kent, Virginia. New Kent, Virginia is the county seat of New Kent County. This is one of the old, original, early parts of America. This is where George Washington's wife, Martha, was born. George Washington was married near here. Some say he was married at the White House church building that's not too far from here. That was actually managed by Robert E. Lee. I'll talk about that here soon. I'll share with you the historical sign of Martha Washington's birthplace. Talk to you about what Yankees did here. I'll walk over to the County Museum and share with you that as well. It's a beautiful memorial right here, dedicated to the locals who answered the call. They did their duty to serve and protect and defend their homes and their families and their homeland in America's largest war, doing what their forefathers had done during the American Revolution. To the revered memory of the Confederate soldiers and sailors from New Kent County. It's much deserved. They fought and died in America's largest war, defending their own homes, their own families. They were the home team. Many are buried in unmarked graves in unknown locations. They certainly deserve this memorial. This ground has a lot of history. In fact, this county was established back in the 1600s. In fact, this speaks about it right here. New Kent Courthouse, New Kent County, established back in 1654. Built a brick courthouse here in 1695. Can you imagine there was a courthouse that was built right here in 1695? But there were fires, set fires in 1753 and 1775, destroyed the buildings and successor. A later courthouse damaged during the Civil War was replaced in 1909. In 1735, County Court Justice George Webb published the Office and Authority, an influential law manual. During Revolutionary War times, Lieutenant General Charles Cornwallis British forces passed through here on June 1781, followed by American troops under Lafayette. Confederate and Union troops passed through during the Peninsula Campaign in 1862. Talked about how this area is heavily plundered and looted, damaged by Union troops during that Peninsula Campaign. It was near here that George Washington married Martha. There is some controversy about where he got married. Some say it was at St. Peter's Church. St. Peter's Church is not too far from here, a few miles from here. It's a church that was built back in 1701. But also many say that he was actually married to Martha. George Washington married Martha at the White House plantation. And that was a home that actually Robert E. Lee managed. It got passed through his wife, and ownership got passed to Robert E. Lee's son. So the house that George Washington got married in was owned by Robert E. Lee's son. And unfortunately, when Union troops came through here, they destroyed that home and burned it down. If you follow my site, you know it seems like Union troops didn't have very much respect for the Founding Fathers. And this is another example of it. They knew the historical significance of the White House that was near here. They knew George Washington would probably get married there, but they burned it down anyways. So this speaks about the Martha Washington birthplace. What I'm going to do is I'll share this with you, and also this right here, John Parke Custis. That should ring a bell. And then I'm going to walk over to the building over here, that it was the Historical Society. And also the building right over here, the old prison. But it says right here, Martha Washington's birthplace. About 2 miles northeast stood Chestnut Grove, the plantation home of John and Frances Jones Dandridge, where Martha Dandridge, the eldest of 8 children, was born on 2nd June 1731. She lived there until 15 May 1750, when she married Daniel Parke Custis, and moved to his plantation, the White House, on the Pamunkey River. According to tradition, the wedding took place at Chestnut Grove, Custis died in 1757, and 2 years later, Martha Custis married George Washington. Chestnut Grove, a 2-story framed house, 6 rooms. It burned us at 1926. So there's some conflicting information. Some say he was George Washington married Martha. Some say it was Chestnut Grove. Most commonly, you'll find he married at the White House, but some say St. Peter's Church, which is nearby, which, like I said, which was first established and built back in 1701. Now, John Parke Custis. Now, this is someone else you might recognize. The Custises, tied into Robert E. Lee's family, tied into the family that Robert E. Lee married into. After all, it was the Custis. As you know, George Washington raised 2 kids. They were Custis kids. They were basically Martha's grandchildren. So George Washington basically adopted. He raised 2 children there at Mount Vernon. One of the little boy grew up to be Robert E. Lee's father-in-law. To put in perspective, he's buried there at the Arlington House, the Robert E. Lee Memorial House there in Arlington National Cemetery. If you're ever at Arlington National Cemetery, you should go see the Robert E. Lee Memorial, also known as the Arlington House, that George Washington Parke Custis owned. And his only surviving child was Mary, and she was the one who married Robert E. Lee. And that's why Robert E. Lee inherited so much of George Washington's artifacts, so much of his personal possessions, and his most important things, including the Arlington House, known as also the Robert E. Lee Memorial, that's over there in Arlington National Cemetery. So this John Parke Custis, you see, he was born at the White House, New Kent here in County in 1755. He died at Eltham, New Kent County, November 1781, where his body remains. This marker placed by the Sons of Revolution in Virginia. John Parke Custis, while acting as aide to General Washington in the Yorktown campaign, he became seriously ill and was taken to the home of his aunt, Mrs. Burwell Bassett, where he died November 1781 with General and Mrs. Washington at his bedside. John Parke Custis, son of Martha Dandridge Custis, who later married George Washington. He married Eleanor Calvert, had 4 children, the youngest of whom were Eleanor and George Washington Parke Custis, who were raised at Mount Vernon. So this right here refers to George Washington Parke Custis, who is, once again, grew up to be Robert E. Lee's father-in-law, because Robert E. Lee married his only daughter. That's why you can, in a sense, say that roughly half of the descendants through adoption of George Washington are through Robert E. Lee. Speaks about Martha Dandridge right here. Martha Dandridge, born 1731, married first Daniel Parke Custis and became mother of John Parke Custis, and then later married George Washington. So once again, I just read this, and it started out with this Confederate memorial that was right over here. I wanted to share this with you because this county is known as being one of the fastest growing counties in areas in the state of Virginia right now, and that's very concerning because you get a lot of non-natives. Many people ask, where did all the Virginians go? And people just keep asking, where did all the Virginians go? I'm going to walk over here to what is the kind of the historical building for this county. First, before I do so, I'm going to walk over here to the Historical Society. This is the old prison, or jail, the old jail. And let's go see if the door is open. Last time I was here, a couple years ago, it was open. And there was historical markers in here last time I was here. And good, it is. It is open. So here is the New Kent Historical Society. And if you can, I don't know if you can see in there very well. There was a historical marker here last time I was here. If you don't recount your family history, it will be lost. Honor your own stories and tell them too. So here's another side. So once again, this is the old jail. And this is what they've done. This is what they've done with the old jail, and basically turned it into the New Kent Historical Society. Let me go ahead and get ready to close this up right here. And that is, as you can see, the New Kent Historical Society right there. Now I'm going to make a transition and walk over here. Now this is the basically the county museum, and I'll pick up the pace as I transition from, once again, the New Kent County Courthouse. This particular building right here was built back in 1909, but the first one dates back to the about 1690s, as we just read about. So Lafayette came through here. If that courthouse was still here, it would have been the oldest courthouse in use in America. Not too long ago, I shared a video from Hanover Courthouse. That's between Fredericksburg and Richmond, and that is the third oldest courthouse in use in all of America. That one dates to before the American Revolution. I think it was built back about 1730. There's a really beautiful Confederate memorial there in front of that courthouse to the men and the women from that area. Not too far from here, once again, this is the old part of America, the old part of Virginia. Old Virginia. There was, not too far from here, just maybe 20-minute, half an hour drive at most, there is a King William County. That is where the oldest courthouse in American continuous use is there. A courthouse that dates back to 1725. A full 50 years before the Declaration of Independence. And there's a beautiful Confederate memorial over there as well in front of that courthouse. It's in the old style, or the old colonial Williamsburg style. So here is kind of the county museum. Let's walk in here. This right here talks about the tale of three structures. Basically, they took the old original structure here. This is the core, the main house. This was built in 1810. And then they later doubled the size. And so it used to look like that. So you can read this historical marker. So let's go in here. I like how when they have these open all the time, and you don't have to just wait for a moment for county museums to open. There's a few county museums that are really tough to see. They're only open maybe 3 or 4 hours for the entire week. So I like how this one's always open. Now, first I want to draw attention to the section over here. It talks about what Yankees did, from what I remember from coming here several times in the past. But we'll read this right now. First, let's read about British Lord Charles Cornwallis was here, and then later on this talks about what George McClellan's army did in this area too. As it says, the British General Lord Charles Cornwallis camped at New Kent Courthouse right here on 23rd June 1781 on his way from Richmond to Williamsburg. He sent John Graves Simcoe at the head of his Queen's Rangers and Hessians to search for a reputed Patriot iron foundry, but they did little but round up a few cattle. The British marched on to Yorktown, where they were besieged by a combined French and American army, cut off from supply by French naval victory in Chesapeake Bay, and surrendered on 19 October 1781. So let's think about that. General Cornwallis was right here in New Kent, right before the siege and before his surrender at Yorktown. He says, but let's compare this next section, because in so many areas across the South, the British did a lot of damage, but the Yankees, Union troops, did far more. It says, there was little physical destruction in the Revolution, which was not the case when General George McClellan led his Union army towards Richmond during the Peninsula Campaign of 1862. McClellan's army was the largest ever seen in the New World, and it spent much of May 1862 in New Kent. Losses of property, livestock, and local soldiers were severe. Now, I think this has been changed a little bit because there was a marker earlier talked about how went into more detail. It didn't whitewash as much of what Union soldiers did around here, looting and plundering, destroying buildings. But you get a bit of a sense here that it was not a peaceful place. The Union troops did a lot of destruction here. Now this right here shows an image, and I'll finish up this video where I started, and that is right here in New Kent. So this is what the New Kent courthouse looked like back in 1862. This is where we're just standing. I just started the video right about there. That's where the Confederate monument now is. The Confederate monument is right about there now. And you can see all this destruction. Some of this, I think this building is still there. So when we go back out there, we'll take notice of that. But it says New Kent Courthouse, 19 May 1862, in a watercolor by Snelden. Of this scene, he recollected the 3rd Army Corps Major General Heinzelman, commanding, camped here May 18th through 20th, 1862. The enemy hastily evacuated as the 3rd Pennsylvania Cavalry Colonel Averill approached. Rebels burned the jail and all the houses were deserted by the inhabitants. The Union soldiers looted the courthouse and record offices. 3 old women were the only persons in town. Can you imagine that happening today? Got the military coming through here. Everybody deserts. The only people left are 3 old women, it says. But this is very common. That's why they're so tragic. Because some of the oldest records in all of America are right here in Virginia. Many of them dating back to 1600s. And this basically encapsulates it right here, where it says Union soldiers looted the courthouse and the records office. So there are so many courthouses that lost all their records during the war. So see some of the other things that are here with this interesting old piano. It doesn't say don't touch. Really out of key. This right here speaks about who lived here. Who lived here in the 1800s? And Scandal, the ball version, jilted lover. You can maybe stop this and read this if you like to. But I do love how they have, this is open, so you don't have to wait for somebody to be here. It's not locked up. So many times I go to counties, and the majority of the time the county museum is closed. Maybe it's like the one I was just at Warrenton yesterday. That one's open, I think, at least 5 days a week. But there's quite a few that are maybe open maybe 1, 2, 3 days, sometimes only a half a day. So here's another part of this section right here, the 1800s. The core of the main house dates to about 1810. And that is what we are looking at right here. And I like how they open up the floor here so you can see the base and the structure. And this speaks about this, the archaeologist who made these digs to these places. All right, so I'm going to transition on, but it is really cool. I'm really glad they have this here. I wish more counties were like this. That's why I like to share these videos sometimes, so you can say, well, maybe you can pick up some good ideas. Every county does things differently. So once again, this is the backside of the county museum that's open all the time. I like how they did that. I was just over this morning at Charles City, Virginia. That's a really historical location as well. It's one of the original 8 shires. The courthouse dates to around, some say 1730 to 1750. They make a claim it's the 3rd oldest courthouse in America. That's really maybe more like the 4th or 5th. But they had a nice little museum that was open all the time as well. And I was really surprised when I showed up today and it was all gutted out. It had really nice displays, and I'm hoping they make it better. I hope they put the displays back. I hope they don't go too woke. And that's why I like to take these videos, because they had a really great display. They actually included in there Edmund Ruffin, the guy who lived in that area, fired the first shots during the war between the states. Had a section on there for John Tyler and his descendants. The grandson of John Tyler, I mentioned in the previous video. It's just amazing. I just shared a video yesterday where I went to the cemetery where President John Tyler, the 10th president of the United States, his grandson served in the Confederacy and was killed during the war. Well, it was just a week ago that President John Tyler's other grandson just died. So isn't it amazing there was a man around up until last week whose brother died during the war? So you can look that up. President John Tyler's grandson who just died. He was 90-something years old. He was born about 60 years after President John Tyler. We know President John Tyler supported the Confederacy from the very beginning. Unfortunately, he died early on in the war. But it's amazing, later on, he had a child who lived to be 90. And it was one of his grandsons just died. One of John Tyler's grandsons died, was killed in action as a Confederate soldier, and another one of his grandsons just died last week. It's pretty amazing. I'll make this transition back. I just shared with you that painting that was, that drawing, that sketch, actually from a Union soldier that he sketched this area. And you could see in that sketch how this area right here just kind of sloped off. And you can see the destruction. You might remember in that sketch, it showed this house right here. That sketch that was done back in 1862. So there's that. And once again, the earliest courthouses that here on New Kent, Virginia, date back to the actually 1690s. The first courthouses, and several courthouses burned, and this one dates back to 1909. And then they built a new one further back here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on and finish where I started, and that is at the beautiful Confederate Memorial over here. I immediately noticed a change. I've been here probably a dozen times over many years, and I noticed there's this new marker right here. This was not here when I was here it was here maybe less than a year ago. So this is the new one. James Lafayette, double spy in the American Revolution War. Valor, honor, freedom, he lies elsewhere in a grave known only to God. So that's what it looks like right here. In fact, there's a marker to him right here as well. You can read about this. Let me go ahead and finish up. I never did read the other side of the Confederate War Memorial right here. But you can imagine, as it says here, just think of the history of General Lafayette camping, staying right here on this courthouse grounds, right before he moved on to Yorktown and was sieged and had to surrender. Think about Martha being raised here, being born here in this area. Think about all the different courthouses that are here. It's quite remarkable. Think about the Yankees, the Union soldiers. I'm reluctant to call them Yankees because, as mentioned, as shown on that board, that wasn't even a really American name. So many of those Union generals were foreign-born, weren't even really Americans. They just, many times, just kind of dropped off the boat, and Lincoln signed them up. Many didn't speak English, barely at all. But here's the other side of this Confederate War Memorial. And you can see right here, this is why we had these, so we do not forget. And sadly, too many are forgetting these days. You see the military units organized in Kent State. Monkey Rifles. Company E, 53rd Virginia. The Grays, New Kent Cavalry, Troop F. You can read this yourself. What I'll do is come around this way. And just kind of finish this up where I started. I share these so we can pay our respects together. And And hey, instead of me talking to myself, and well, at least I can share this with you. And also do this so we can document this, right? We can save it, bring this to your attention so it's not forgotten, because the Mayoist leftists are just trying to remove memorials, historical signs. They're trying to change street names. They're trying to change building names. They're removing books from libraries. They are trying to purge very important aspects of American history. That's why I want to share this with you, so we are all aware of this, because I did a quick check. I checked multiple sources when I go around, and for the heck of it, I just checked at AI, and AI said they're not aware. It wasn't aware there was a Confederate monument here, and we need to change that. That's why we all need to get around and do what we can to edit things like Wikipedia, to make sure historical markers, make sure we got books in place, make sure get involved in historical societies, making sure these things are not just forgotten. Get online and type in, let people know that this monument does exist. It has existed for over a century. It's a beautiful sight. So leaving this with you today, this county, this town, this community should be very proud of this memorial. All these memorials, their history, should know about this. It's just really sad when I run across folks once in a while and I start talking about their history. They've lived here for decades, and I know more about their town and their history just passing through than they do after having lived here for decades. It's really sad. It's happened multiple times. I'll come up, we're all talking to them about a historical moment, something that happened, a mural, a historical marker, something that happened, and they're just completely clueless. So, hey, how long have you been here? Some have been here for a short time, others have been here for decades. And it's like, how do you not know this? History is very, very important. Gives us a grounding, gives us a frame, so we know where we came from. So I hope you're all doing well. Take care, y'all, from New Kent, Virginia. May God bless you. May God bless and save America. May God bless and save Dixie.